Welcome back guys, my name is Clyde and today I'm going to go over a post that I made in Trading 212 about taxing the rich illusion and why Bitcoin is the solution. I received 8 downvotes, goes to show how many people are so fond of taxing the rich without understanding the consequences, and it becomes evident once I go over the comment section later, so stay tuned for that, it gets interesting. Most people think landlords are the problem, but the truth is, landlords don't own their houses, the banks do. So when governments talk about wealth taxes and taxing the rich, they're not taxing the real rich, they're taxing the pawns while the king collects the interests. If the landlord can't handle rising rates and maintenance and new taxes, the bank just takes the property back. No drama, no loss, just another asset moved upstream. Meanwhile, banks barely pay wealth tax at all. They use corporate structures, loopholes, and accounting to dodge what regular people get crushed by. So guess what wealth taxes actually do? They accelerate consolidation. Small rich gets wiped out, while credit creators get stronger. You're just clearing the board for the real elites. And the only reason why the system works this way is because money itself is rigged, printed, inflated, and controlled by the people who never get taxed the way you do. Want fairness? You can get it by changing the money, not by taxing the pawns. That's what Bitcoin is, a way to checkmate the king instead of fighting the pieces he controls. So now let's go over the comments. This is a good one by Shorty MC Shorts. Interesting name. He said, "But the elites own most of the Bitcoin, mate. Although to be fair, a few years ago, now people really did have a chance to accumulate it when it was cheap. At around 100k US dollars. I know people will say it's early and all that, but the majority have an interest in saying that. Like Saylor, who has somehow convinced people to buy his company to give him money to then go and buy Bitcoin. You may well be right, mate. It's only my view that it's not the store of value or solution that it's made out to be. But then again, compared to anything else, what really is anymore?" I'm aware of this argument and I have a very good response for that. I said, a lot of the Bitcoin in spot ETFs like BlackRock isn't owned outright by them. It's held on behalf of their clients, which are individuals, retirement funds and insurance companies, etc. BlackRock doesn't just dump that Bitcoin whatever they want, they're custodian for real people. And according to the latest research on CoinDesk, around 65% of Bitcoin is owned by individuals. ETFs make up around 7.8%, businesses around 6.2%, governments 1.5%, and 76% are lost coins. And I believe around 5% has yet to be mined. So there's 5% more of Bitcoin that's yet to be discovered. You can't say the same with gold because no one knows exactly how many gold is on Earth. But what we do know is that gold increases its supply by 2% per year. And that's just from legal mining that gets reported. Illegal gold mining that goes unreported, we're looking at around 3% per year. So that's like 2 to 3% inflation. Habu said, "Fix money, fix the world, and solution, finite amount equals Bitcoin." And that's true because fiat currencies like the US dollar is infinite. They're inflationary and manipulated. Bitcoin is fixed in supply, transparent and self-sovereign. Fix the money and a lot of the world's other problems can't be hidden behind it anymore. And he replied, "Yes, but all our governments do is control. They know till they can print something which literally has no value, but they can print overnight causes inflation. Who gets hit the hardest? the poorest. Until money isn't fixed, they can control, go to wars, bailouts, etc. The only solution we have left is Bitcoin and gold. And Bitcoin beats gold in every form, so I hope all the sheeps in the world realizes this. I would rather buy MSTR, which is still better than keeping my money in fiat, because long run, it will be the most valuable company. Some people who even don't MSTR criticize it are the biggest losers. Go back to your dividend stocks and be happy with your 5% yearly gains. So he's taken a more aggressive approach, which is understandable when you're very passionate about helping people. Sometimes you can speak like this, but one of the things Michael Saylor emphasizes in his 21 rule of Bitcoin is to spread Bitcoin with love. Yeah, I know it sounds kind of gay, but it's important to educate people in a way where you're not antagonizing them. Because when you do, when you get aggressive and try to teach them about something that they don't really understand, you're really just delaying their belief in what you're trying to teach. So the fastest way to convince them is to spread Bitcoin with love. I said, glad we're on the same page. I take that you spent thousands of hours studying Bitcoin, considering you understand what money is. And dividend stocks that pays 5% isn't the best. If they're after yield, very soon they'll come to love STRC, one of Strategy's preferred stock that pays 10%. He said he knows what STR is. It will suck all the liquidity sitting in bonds and also in savings account. When hedge funds and investors realize Stretch paying 10% yearly, they will move money from bonds and all the low-paying interest instrument who are outdated to today's world. MSTR shaking the credit market, not much option rather than accept the true brilliance of Saylor, who I believe far more smart than us and far more to lose than us to keep calm and keep stacking. Yes, so if you're a yield investor who likes to get paid every month, you're gonna really love Stretch because it pays 10% yield yearly and the payment is every month. And the best part is, if you don't like the volatility of Bitcoin and you just want stability, STRC can provide that for you. You can invest in STRC through IBKR. I'll link it in the description and in the comments section below. S. Dizzle said, I like the concept of Bitcoin, but I can't see how we can rely on something so volatile as a main currency. I couldn't cope with be paid in Bitcoin. Your bank balance moves around too much, and so does everything you want to buy. I also think it's not independent of mainstream markets, as bad days from them equal bad days for Bitcoin. That's true. Some people compare Bitcoin with Nasdaq, tech stocks basically. If the tech stock goes down, Bitcoin goes down. He continues, so for me, it's just another stock really, but can't really be trusted to hold value. These are my non-expert observations and would be interested to hear knowledgeable responses. Peace. And I said, I appreciate your concerns. The way I see it, Bitcoin is volatile today because it's early, not because it's unreliable. You don't need to be paid in Bitcoin. Right now it works best as a long-term store of value. The only reason it moves with markets is because everything is priced in fiat currencies. As adoption grows, volatility falls and it'll stabilize like the S&P 500. And I don't see Bitcoin as just another stock because it's the only asset with a fixed supply and no central authority. 1 Bitcoin equals 1 Bitcoin in a decade's time. Meanwhile, £100 equals £50 of purchasing power in a decade's time. So what I meant by that is, if you own 1 Bitcoin today, it's not going to lose its value in a decade's time, 10 years from now. But you can't say the same with £100. When you save £100 today, won't be able to buy the same thing in the future, 10 years from now, because prices of everything would have shot up by then. It would be more expensive in the future when you save in British pounds, US dollars, euros, fiat currencies. And to protect yourself from that, you save in Bitcoin. And here's the finale, the number one comment that I want everyone to understand why taxing the rich is not the solution for wealth inequality, and that Bitcoin is the true solution. 2pence said, "How does the currency change who owns the property? More nonsense. The debt depends on who owns the property. No mortgage equals the property owner owns it. If it costs more, tax them till they choose to sell." And my response was simple. When you raise taxes, landlords don't end up selling to ordinary people. They sell to whoever can buy fastest and in cash. That's almost always institutions, and if they can't sell in time due to wealth tax squeezing them, the bank repossesses it anyway. The property just moves up the hierarchy. This happens because the currency system inflates asset prices faster than wages, so regular buyers can't compete. Those closest to the money printer, which are the banks, always win the bidding war. That's why changing the currency matters. As long as money is inflationary and credit-driven, property will keep flowing upward no matter who you tax. 2pence replied, "So the bank or other entity upstream ends up owning it according to you. So what do they do with it? Just sit on it and pay for upkeep while it's empty? Any rational person would sell it if it wasn't earning them more than it costs to keep. If this happens at scale, house prices will become more affordable. If banks owns the houses, they still pay the wealth tax, so the government has more money to pay for essential services. Essential services like NHS. Either way, outcome is positive to me." And this is what I said in reply. "It's not according to me. This is just how large holders actually behave. When wealth taxes force smaller landlords to sell quickly, the average families don't step in. Institutions do. A regular buyer with a mortgage takes 2 to 3 months to complete a purchase. Blackstone can close with cash in days. Look at Blackstone, Invitation Homes, REITs and big private equity funds. When they accumulate housing, they aren't stuck paying upkeep while it's empty. Big entities have the balance sheet to absorb costs and pass them down. Sure, they may technically pay wealth tax, but they can simply raise rents, increase interest rates, and shift the cost onto tenants and borrowers to cover the taxes. Also, institutions pay lower taxes than small landlords thanks to corporate tax rates and tax planning loopholes, for example, offshore holding companies. And as for the government getting more money, it's the same government whose policies created this pressure on tenants in the first place. On top of that, the money they print to fund bonds inflates the value of houses over time, making institutional landlords even stronger, while the average person gets priced out. High taxes on landlords feel positive in theory, but in practice, they don't fix the system. They just squeeze the middle layer while wealth concentrates at the top. Trailer123 said, "Sorry, but landlords do sell to first-time buyers and that also have mortgages as they will pay more than cash buyers, and so the landlord prefers a mortgage buyer. P.S. Sorry to stick my nose in, I don't know much about Bitcoin, but property, I do." And I replied to Trailer because he made a good point. Sure, landlords can wait 2 to 3 months in normal conditions for the mortgage buyer willing to pay more. But wealth taxes don't create normal conditions, they create forced seller conditions. That's when timing suddenly matters a lot more. When taxes rise and rates are high, first-time buyers can't borrow enough or move fast enough. Cash buyers, especially institutions, become the easiest, safest option for landlords. So the policy ends up shifting more supply to the bigger rich, not average families. So the takeaway is simple. When you raise taxes on landlords, they will simply move the cost onto their tenants by increasing rents and increasing rates. And when the small rich landlord sells, they're not selling it to regular people, they are selling it to the ultra rich. Wealth taxes doesn't create normal conditions, it creates a forced seller condition. And they will prioritize selling to institutions because they are cash buyers with a lot of money. The average family does not have a lot of money. They don't have 100k of cash in their bank account ready to buy a bunch of houses. So the solution is to completely fix the money supply, to stop the government and central banks from printing the money and inflating the economy. Bitcoin is the solution. Because its supply is fixed, there can only be 21 million, which means they can't inflate the supply of Bitcoin like they could with fiat currencies. As the number of British pounds and US dollars increase in supply, house prices and everything else will also increase. But when you save in Bitcoin, house prices and everything else goes down in value. It gets cheaper over time when you save in Bitcoin. If you learned something of value, I'd appreciate you leave a like and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this.